overview. Essentially, we'll talk about the financial aid process as well as scholarships. So we are going to go ahead and begin. So again, my name is Megan. Welcome everybody. I have been at College Depot a little over 4 years, and I have helped numerous students and families, specifically the students, obviously, get into college not only in state, out of state, and out of the country. I am very passionate about assisting students in meeting their needs and helping them get to where they want to go. My colleague Cooper is presenting virtually today, but he's also physically in the center as well. And so we'll allow him to give a brief introduction when he presents today. So I just want to share with you, we have Cooper as well. And then we also have other members that are present today too. We have Diana Matir, our financial aid expert through College Depot. She is actually in Las Vegas, but is still able to assist us with all of the wonderful questions that you may have in person here, as well as virtually. And we have Angelique and Angel Marie from the University of Arizona Early Outreach Project. They are actually tabling here at College Depot today. So essentially their mission is to assist underrepresented represented students and low-income students achieve higher academic success. So if you're interested in stopping by their table, feel free to do that on your way out. So just a couple of housekeeping rules, given the amount of students that are attending in person and virtually. We have a few recommendations and requests of you. So we have a lot to cover today and only, kind of a limited amount of time to get through all the content. So we want to make sure that if you do have questions, if you're in person, feel free to raise your hand, and we will have all of our members, Diana, Cooper, and myself, answer your questions today. If you're attending virtually, please mute yourself, and also you can put your questions in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and ask your questions through the computer as well. We'll have everyone here to answer your questions as well. And then also in terms of the set amount of opportunities we have for questions, not only if your questions are not fully answered today, feel free to schedule one-on-one appointments with us here at College Depot. We are happy to assist you further. So we will keep going. So who are we? College Depot. So we are a free full-service college access center located here at the Burden Bar Central Library on the 2nd floor. Essentially, our mission and vision is to assist students with all the college preparation services and planning that you need, whether that's the scholarships and financial aid that we're talking about today, the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid, the CSS profile, college applications, reviewing financial aid packages, essay writing, personal statements, and more. So if you are interested in receiving any of those services, like I mentioned, we offer one-on-one appointments, 45-minute appointments in Spanish and English to assist you further. So I should also mention that we also have a high school diploma program for high school adults, so adults that want to get their high school diploma, as well as GED options as well. And the other service that we offer is apprenticeship options called Craft a Profession. So if that is something that any of you are interested in as well, primarily today is about financial aid and scholarships, those are other services we offer as well. So today, essentially my portion is divided into a few components. Government assistance, the FAFSA, or the free application for federal student aid, work study, loans, and institutional aid. So essentially for this first part, we'll hopefully give you an opportunity to learn a little bit more about these topics. So types of financial aid. So essentially the core part of the financial aid process, students, families, partners, is to fill out the FAFSA, or the free application for federal student aid. Essentially institutions, so for example, Arizona State University, or even a school out of state, so even an Ivy League such as Harvard, they cannot determine financial need and financial assistance for your family without filling out the FAFSA or the CSS profile. So we often have conversations with families that is the core resource and application that you need to fill out at the beginning. So keep in mind the FAFSA opens up October 1st of the year prior to starting school. So essentially for those seniors that are in the room today and virtually, October 1st of this academic year, so this year 2022, you can fill out your FAFSA if you're attending in fall of 2023. The FAFSA has to be completed every year for you while you're in school. So every 2 to 4 to 6 years, right? So essentially every year, if you're going for 2 years, 4 years, 6 years, you have to complete your FAFSA. The FAFSA is can award currently up to $6,895 per year. So keep in mind that's about $3,400 per semester. That is very reasonable for a lot of families, and that is a great amount of money that can be awarded to the student. That is called a grant. Work study is another option that students can partake in. Essentially, when you fill out the FAFSA, there's a question on the FAFSA form that says, "Are you interested in work study? Yes or no, or I don't know." So that doesn't guarantee that you are going to be given that work study opportunity at school, but because you do have to also apply at the school itself, but essentially saying you have that interest. And the other option that the federal government offers when you fill out the FAFSA are what are called loans. So that is a conversation that we have at College Depot. If that is something of your interest, I know that everybody has, maybe they've heard, certain things about what loans mean or may not mean, but we really break that down here at College Depot and explain the process of applying for loans and also taking out loans. Keep in mind, for loans, you do not have to take out the entirety of the loan. You can take out parts of the loan. You also have to repay back loans 6 months after you graduate from college. So keep in mind, there is a loan repayment. That is a requirement when taking out a loan. So government grants. So grants are gift assistance that do not require repayment. So like I said, that core application is the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid. That is one of our bread and butter appointments here at College Depot. So we sit down with you, we walk you step by step on how to fill out the entirety of the FAFSA. And so the FAFSA is so important because it determines Pell Grant eligibility, or that about $6,800, like I mentioned before. State grants, I will admit, at least in the state of Arizona, there are unfortunately not state grants available, but there is what's called the Federal Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant, FSEOG, for students that have demonstrated exceptional financial needs. So essentially, based on family income, you could be awarded, up $400, $500, $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, up to $4,000 in this grant assistance directly through the institution itself. So let's say you apply to ASU and you meet exceptional financial need, the ASU itself will directly award you this money in addition to the government assistance. Work study, sorry.
Just one question.
Yeah.
Was really good in the chat. Pull it back up. Myrtle asked, is the grant amount adjusted if you say you want to consider work study?
Oh, that's a great question. So the FAFSA amount, that $6,895 is the amount of money that is awarded for that federal aid. So work studies in addition. So keep in mind, my frame of reference often is Arizona State University, the Obama Scholarship. So for those of you in the room and also virtually, ASU's Obama Scholarship essentially covers full tuition, room and board, and all of that. It's a merit and a need-based scholarship. So when you see a financial aid package, and Diana Mateer, who's on the line as well, like I mentioned, it's our financial aid expert. She and all of us often step-by-step break down the financial aid package and look through the financial aid options available. Work study is often included in there as an option. So it's a totality of experiences that you receive as a student. So hopefully, Myrtle, that answers your question. If you have follow-up questions, you can definitely ask.
Yeah, if you have time for one more.
Yeah.
You want to ask, will financial aid change if you plan to study outside of the state?
Okay, so that is a great question. So the federal financial aid options, so that FAFSA, that $68,945 approximately, that is consistent across the United States, depending on family income. So essentially, all of this is based on family income that is reported on the FAFSA or the CSS profile. Institutions themselves across the nation offer their own financial aid packages, and those vary. So that's a great question. So work study. So like I mentioned to you guys before, work study is always asked on the FAFSA, are you interested in work study? It's not a requirement to partake in work study, but it is often encouraged if you're interested in getting that financial aid. I always, share with students and families that it is that rare student that receives what's called that full ride or free ride to college. If that is a term you guys have heard before, there's always some type of form of expectation from the student themselves to partake in some form of work study or something like that, in addition to the institutional aid that is awarded from the school. So basically, based on financial need, like I said, as determined by the FAFSA or the CSS profile, is what will determine your work study. The work study is arranged by the school itself. So essentially, when you fill out the FAFSA and when you come time to get admitted to your school, prior to starting school, you will be able to select a work study option. So they're usually not a huge amount of hours in the week, but they also contribute to your financial aid package. Loans, like I mentioned before, loans are also an option for students. It is a rare financial aid package that doesn't, offer or encourage students to consider some form of a small loan, whether it's a unsubsidized, subsidized, or parent plus loan. These are all conversations, like I said, that we have at College Depot regularly. So if that is something you're even thinking about as a possibility for your son or daughter in the future, definitely consider talking to us further. Everyone who fills out a FAFSA is eligible for a loan. I will admit for students that are seeking higher education post the undergraduate level, so master's, doctoral programs, etc., loans are often option as well. So the FAFSA. So we at College Depot, yes.
Is it okay to continue?
Of course.
Just so you know.
Yeah.
So we actually have two questions. One from Alexa, both related to work study. If you answer no to work study on the FAFSA, can you change your mind later? And Brittany asked, is work study available when the FAFSA opens? Okay, great. So yes, so work study on the FAFSA, like everything on your FAFSA, fortunately, you can always make corrections, right? So it's not a kind of a one and done thing. Once you hit submit, there's always the opportunity to make corrections. So I want you guys to know, for those who are attending virtually and in person, that any correction can be made. And then in terms of the choosing the work study option, so when October opens up this fall, right, for those students that are looking to go in the fall of 2023, for reference, the work study options are not available yet. You have to get admitted into the institution itself, and usually prior to the start of the school year is when the options are available. For example, with a student of mine that I just was going to ASU this fall, she just recently got awarded her work study option. So it's definitely later in the year. So that's a great question. So the FAFSA, what essentially is it? So it's this brief application, 30 to 45 minutes to an hour, depending on family income and things like that. FAFSA.gov, not FAFSA.com, is where you go. Like I said, we schedule those one-on-one appointments here at College Depot. So here are kind of the core components of what you'll need to provide when you come in. If you choose to come into for an appointment, you'll need your social security number as a student. If you are undocumented, unfortunately at this time you cannot file the FAFSA, but if you are an eligible non-citizen and have a alien ID number, essentially starts with an A, you can enter that information into your FAFSA. The taxes, if you are the student filed, so yes. Non-citizen? Yeah, so essentially if you, so a lot of times if you have a social security number as well as your A number, so, families that and students that have maybe come to Arizona in the United States, 5-10 years earlier and have that information. If you've come in as a unaccompanied minor, so like from a foreign country, those are also qualities. If you have come in specifically with a U visa or things like that, and if for your situation in particular, if you're interested in learning more, we can definitely follow up with a one-on-one appointment. That's a great question. Yeah. There's two more questions.
Yeah.
So one was good. I think it was Julie and Julia asked if they could create their FAFSA ID before October 1st.
Okay.
And then Diana asked if you can elaborate just a little bit more on why students would need to create a CSS profile.
Yes, sure. So Julia and Juliet, thank you so much. Those are great questions. FAFSA IDs, yes, can be created ahead of October. We just encourage students to keep in mind that, if you create it earlier, then there's always the risk of forgetting that information. So that's something to keep in mind. And then thank you, Diana, for asking more about the CSS profile. So yes, so students, for those of you who are interested in going out of state in particular, and also wanting more, not necessarily even an Ivy League school, but, those out of state schools that may require more information about your financial need. The CSS profile is something that we do at College Depot. We help students complete that too. I will say that Diana, who asked the question, our financial expert, calls it the FAFSA on steroids. So it essentially is a much more detailed account of your financial history, including not only retirement savings, but if you have assets and things like that, it goes into much more detail about your financial history for the parents in particular. So I hope Diana and Julia and Juliet that answer your questions. I just want to keep mindful of the time so we give ample opportunity for Cooper, my co-presenter, to present. So yes, the FAFSA, the FAFSA ID, can be created ahead of time. Keep in mind, like I said, that is something to think about when you're when it comes October, to make sure you have that information saved in a secure location, and you remember that information. Your FAFSA ID username and password is used not only to log into the FAFSA, but also to sign the FAFSA electronically. If your parent is undocumented, have no fear, they can still assist you with the FAFSA. We just put in all zeros for the parent portion of the Social Security information, and they sign it electronically. I'm sorry, they sign it in a paper form, sorry, and we mail it to the federal student aid program. Dependency status. So there's a few parts that I want to highlight about the FAFSA. So essentially, all of you students that are filing the FAFSA will most likely be called a dependent student for FAFSA purposes. That essentially means that we have to provide parental information about your parents. There's only a few exceptions that we don't provide parental information. Let's say you physically cannot contact your parent and have no contact with them. Then we will work around that and kind of figure out all their alternatives. If you can get on the phone and contact your mom or dad, even if they live in another country, that is not that's not I guess a reason to not fill out the FAFSA and also be considered independent. So, but if you are, these are the characteristics or qualities for FAFSA purposes that determine independent status. Essentially, that means you do not have to provide parental information on your FAFSA. If you're 24 as of December 31st of the award year, so at College Depot, we also see adult students that are going back to school as well, in addition to high school students. Enrolled in a master's or a doctorate program, like I mentioned, previously married, have children who receive more than half of the support from the student, have dependents other than children, so grandma, grandpa, aunts, uncles, cousins, who they provide half of the support. Both parents have passed away, or the student was declared a ward of the court. So essentially, students that possibly were in the foster care system as well, up to age 18. These are all questions that are asked on the FAFSA, and essentially you check them off if any of these apply to you, a veteran of the armed forces, or certain homeless categories. So if you are ever at risk of being homeless or self-supporting and homeless, those would be all criteria that would determine your independent status. Another important part about the FAFSA, household size. So the FAFSA determines eligibility and how much money you're going to receive based on what you report in terms of your household size. So let's say you're a family of 2, so mom and the student, or a family of 10. So it will vary in terms of eligibility. Number of household members in college, not including parents, so obviously including yourself as a student, and if you have siblings as well. And then income, FAFSA asks for 2 years prior, like I mentioned before. So for those students that are starting as freshmen in the fall of 2023. When you do your FAFSA this coming October or after, you'll need your 2021 taxes. Also include income earned from work and some forms of untaxable income. In addition, the FAFSA will ask often, or may ask, not often, sorry, occasionally ask for assets. So essentially, your primary home, right? So the home that you guys live in, you do not report on the FAFSA. But let's say you have rental properties or other homes, that is reported on the FAFSA. If you have a small business or retirement accounts, etc., that's also information included on the FAFSA. And I will give you an opportunity. Okay, perfect. And then the last part that I want to talk about before I pass the baton along to Cooper is what's the term called institutional financial aid. So essentially, FAFSA and the financial aid package for every institution that you are applying to is based on the following. So your GPA, that unweighted GPA, your ACT or SAT score. Keep in mind, a lot of schools are have what's called test optional. So that essentially means that is not a requirement for admissions, but it can help with that merit base, which is based on your ACT and SAT score. So I do encourage you students, if you are thinking of taking the ACT or SAT, it can be helpful for you. Financial need, like I said, based on that FAFSA or CSS profile, athletics, community service, academics, and most colleges and universities have a financial aid section on their website. We personally put the in-state information, but like I said, if any of you guys are interested in looking out of state or even out of the country, we also help with financial aid assistance here at College Depot. Thank you to all of you that were here in person and virtually. If there are any other questions, Chris, I will ask. Otherwise, I will baton pass to Cooper and my colleague who is also presenting today on the topic of scholarships. And then keep in mind, once again, for those of you who are here in person, we do have packets of this information that and included in the packet, I should highlight, we have a few things that are of importance. The brag sheet, which we created here at College Depot, is an account of all of the information that is important to you about athletics, personal attributes, things like that, that is very helpful for scholarships. Oh, we have a question, and then I'll go through that.
Can you just go back to that
Sure.
last page?
Sure. This one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Will we be able to get those websites, or we have to take a picture of it now?
Oh, no, now that you guys are all here, I can send you all this information, not the PowerPoint specifically, but the links to all these websites for sure. I'll share that with you. Yeah. So really quickly, wanted to kind of highlight what's in your packet. If you guys don't have it, if you do, don't have one, feel free to grab one on your way out. I mentioned the brag sheet. That's very important for scholarships. Oh, we have a question. Yeah.
So Julia asked, is there a specific ACT or SAT score average universities seek when awarding merit scholarships? If so, is it recommended to retake if student is slightly under?
So that is a great question, and thank you, Julia and Julia. We will follow up that because you are my personal grit student. There is not a cutoff, honestly, that I can say is universal to every institution itself. I will admit, the Ivy Leagues, if you use that term, tend to ask for a higher score. But I think my recommendation is to definitely reach out to every institution itself if you're interested in learning more, because unfortunately I don't have a specific kind of cutoff that is guaranteed to you. But like I mentioned, for you, Juliet, in particular, for your situation, you are right on par. So I think you're golden. But if you guys do have specific questions about that, like I said, we are always open to scheduling appointments here at College Depot. Yeah.
One more question from Eleanor.
Yeah.
Does financial aid only apply to assist?
Okay, so that is a great question, Eleanor. So I will admit the FAFSA, or that free application for federal student aid, you do have to have that social security number or the eligible non-citizen. But keep in mind at College Depot, if for some reason, if you are a DACA or a Dreamer student, we also help students with that financial need. And there is the Dream.US scholarship. That is one we promote heavily here at College Depot for those Dreamer students that helps with financial needs. So keep in mind that is still available to you. You just the federal financial aid, unfortunately, is not available to you. Hopefully that helps. Any other questions, Chris? No, okay. So one more really quickly so I can baton pass to Cooper. The other things that are in your packet, students and parents that are here in person, are the FAFSA half sheet. So essentially what information is important for you for the FAFSA, the FSA ID sheet in case you guys want to do that FSA ID ahead of time. We also have the timelines for 11th and 12th grade. For those of you that are possibly in the younger grades, let me know. We can grab those for you. We have timelines for the other grades. And then we have a scholarship matrix in there too, because so much of this is about organization, right? So that's one thing that I highlight with all of my students. That is a key to success here when you're applying for college, is to stay organized. So so I'm gonna baton pass to Cooper to present on the anatomy of scholarships.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Megan. Hopefully everybody can hear me virtually and in the room with Megan as well. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us today. And Megan, thank you so much for all that information on financial aid. My name's Cooper. I work here at College Depot. I've been here for about 2 years now, and I'm kind of our scholarships guy. So I'm going to take you through kind of what scholarships are and how their applications work. Before we do so, though, I did want to give a chance to our other esteemed member, Diana. I just wanted to ask if you had anything to add on the financial aid stuff, either things we didn't cover or any kind of last tips or tricks before we move on.
Not really. Thank you, Cooper, and good morning, everyone. Megan did an awesome job of providing a ton of information in a very short time. My only comment is I asked a question about the CSS profile. For those of you who are considering out-of-state private institutions, the CSS profile will be one of the things you need to complete. Usually, schools on which you're applying on the common application also require the CSS profile in addition to the FAFSA. So it's not an either or, it's you must do both if the school asks for both. That profile opens on October 1st as well. So for those of you who are feeling particularly ambitious and want to get things started, the creation of the FSA ID login or ID is something you can do right now. And if you think you might be applying out of state to one of the more expensive private institutions, the likelihood is you will need a CSS profile. And I would suggest that you go into College Board and create an account for that right now. But there's nothing else you need to be doing right now, except listening to Cooper talk about scholarships, where it's never too early to start on those. Thank you, Cooper.
Of course, Diana, thank you so much for that. But yeah, so let's get started talking about scholarships today. So first off, I just kind of want to start by talking about what exactly is a scholarship. Scholarships are another form of aid of finances that you can apply for and receive to help pay for your college education. The great thing about scholarships is that they're free. You don't need to pay them back or anything like that. There's no fees associated with them. So they can be really helpful in affording college, helping you to pay for those college expenses. So today we're going to do a couple different things. And first thing we're going to do is talk about the main components of scholarship applications, what you need in order to apply for most scholarships. I'll be kind of hitting on this point a lot in terms of reading through the scholarship application. Usually scholarships will have a website or they'll be associated with a school, for example, and they will have their information listed on the application. Taking the time to really read through that is going to help a lot identifying what you need in order to apply for it. The second thing we're going to talk about is identifying how long it takes and the actual process of applying for scholarships. So we'll go through that as well. And then we also wanted to introduce a couple of different databases you could use in your scholarship search, especially finding reliable scholarships, ones that are specific for Arizona students, for example. So we'll definitely cover those as well. As Megan mentioned before, if you have any questions as we're talking, please feel free to throw them in the chat. I'll try and take breaks as I'm talking to answer those. And then I think we'll definitely have time for questions at the end as well. But yeah, let's get going. So First thing we're going to talk about is what you need in order to apply for a lot of scholarships. And this is kind of a general guide. Obviously, scholarships are going to change depending on their specific circumstances. But if you have these kind of ahead of time, it can really save time when you're doing the actual applications. The first category we're going to talk about is academics. Then we'll talk a little bit about letters of recommendation. We'll move on to resume, and then we'll also cover personal statements. So let's get started with academics. So some scholarships, especially merit-based scholarships, are going to ask about your GPA. And some of them might list, again, in their application, you need to have above a 2.5 or above a 3, above a 3.5. Usually it's going to be on a scale of 4.0, but again, reading through the application specifically, they'll usually say what the scale is that they want. We had a question earlier about SAT or ACT scores. Again, those can factor in, especially in merit-based scholarships. And again, the application will usually clarify if there is a certain range that they want or that they need. Megan also mentioned that a lot of scholarships are going test optional. So that's definitely a trend that we're seeing. Again, I really recommend taking the time to read through the application, figuring out what they're asking for in terms of entrance exams. And then you can always reach out to their contact person if you have further questions. Something else you might see, especially in merit-based scholarships, are asking about honors classes or advanced classes. So if you're taking AP, IB, ACE courses, anything like that, it's great to kind of have that information handy and to know about that ahead of time, ahead of applying. Something else I really recommend is a lot of scholarships are going to ask for transcripts. And you'll see two different types of asks essentially for this. Sometimes you'll see what's called an unofficial transcript. And that's going to be a transcript that you might be able to download from your school or get them sent to you. It's not necessarily signed and sealed like an official transcript. But a lot of scholarships will ask you just to upload an unofficial copy of your transcript so they can see your grades and your classes. Some of the more selective ones might ask for an official transcript, and that's going to come directly from your school. So being familiar with your school's process of getting official transcripts is great. And that's something I'd recommend asking your counselor about. Your teachers would probably know as well, but just being familiar with that process also helps, obviously, for college applications as well. So yeah, that's kind of the academic components. Let's move on to talking about letters of recommendation. So letters of recommendation, again, you might see these asked for scholarships that are a little bit more selective. The kind of big ticket scholarships might ask for these. They're usually part of a more intricate application process. Essentially, letters of recommendation, you're going to ask people that you know and that know you and your achievements to write a letter recommending you for the scholarship. And this could be a variety of different people. Usually, again, the application will list how many letters they're looking for. And they might say they want specific letters from your teachers or from your counselors. They might also give you an option to select who you want to write. So something else you can think about is asking people who could offer different perspectives on what you've done, what you're hoping to do, maybe a teacher and a coach, maybe a teacher and someone you work with in the community, for example. Something that we do recommend at the top of the slide here is asking ahead of time. The people writing your letters are often super busy with their own stuff and also writing other letters. So if you can, we recommend at least 2 to 3 weeks in advance and even earlier if you can. Something else that's really critical when you're asking about people writing the letters is to really clearly identify deadlines for them. So letting them know which scholarships you're applying to and when those applications need the letters by. So the more upfront you are with that information, the more that they can help you. I see a question in the chat actually related to letters of recommendation. How many letters of recommendations do students collect? So I think essentially what they're asking there is how many letters would be good to have. Again, it kind of ranges based off of the scholarship, but for the most part, I usually see between 2 or 3. So that's what I'd recommend. maybe again, a couple of your teachers, your counselor, and then if you're interested in something specific like an athletic scholarship, a coach, or maybe if you're interested in a biology specific scholarship, asking your biology teacher, something like that. But having 2 to 3 is usually a good amount typically. No worries about the typo. Awesome. So yeah, but please keep the questions coming as we continue moving on. The questions have been great so far today. So talking about asking people for these letters, something else again that we really recommend is giving them information up front, not just the deadlines, but information about yourself. And I think that makes sense because if they're going to be writing a letter about you, the more information you can provide them, the better, because they can make their letters more specific to you. For example, giving them, again, the list of scholarships that you're applying to, maybe including your resume if you have that. You could also include a copy of your unofficial transcripts. We're going to talk about personal statements, but that could give them insight in terms of your goals, what you're trying to do with the scholarship. We also recommend something called a self-assessment. And essentially, you can find this on our website. I think it's kind of included on the slide there as well. But essentially talking a little bit about yourself in terms of what you've done, what things you're really passionate about, your activities, your different academic achievements. So writing about yourself in that way so that they can get insight to write the letters themselves. And then if the application asks for any kind of specific things with the letter, specific guidelines or specific ways to submit it, obviously giving them that information up front is super helpful. Also, we really recommend thanking your recommenders when they do this, because it does take a lot of time and effort to write a good letter of recommendation. So really kind of appreciating people who do that for you is definitely an A+ in our book. Awesome. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about resumes. So again, these might come up in the more selective scholarships, maybe the merit-based ones, or if you're doing something community service-based scholarship, I see that quite a bit. And for an academic resume specifically, we have a couple of different tips. You can see an example on the right there. Bianca was actually a part of our team. She was one of our AmeriCorps members. And one of the things I really like about this example is how organized it is. And that's something that I really recommend, is having your resume look very inviting to look at and to read. People who read resumes are going to be reading a lot of them. And so the more friendly you can make yours in terms of the way it looks, the better, in my opinion. So for along those lines, we recommend trying to keep it to a 1-page length, especially for an academic resume. You're going to want to include contact information, and usually you're going to want to include an email, not your high school email. So that, especially as you're going to college, they can contact you beyond graduating from high school. So if you have a personal email or a professional email, that's a great thing to include. Something I really like and that we recommend is using a bullet point format. The reason I really like that is it helps me stay concise. And again, that's something too, you don't necessarily want to overwhelm the reader with a ton of information. It's great to hit on the main points of your experiences or your achievements, but being concise is great on this kind of thing. And remember, they can always ask more questions based off what they see on your resume. A couple of other different sections you can include on your resume. Obviously, education section, you can list your high school if you've done any dual enrollment classes or advanced honors courses, anything like that. You can also have a work experience section if you had work experience. And then also a community involvement. If you're part of community organizations or you do community service work, that's a great thing to include. And then also special skills or training sections. So in particular, let's say you're applying for a scholarship based off of graphic design or something in the arts. If you're familiar with certain types of software that graphic designers use, that would be a great thing to put in your skills or training section. But yeah, so just kind of a couple of different options of things to include on a resume, on an academic resume. So I see a couple of questions coming in. One is, so are we sending our resumes to the scholarship application? This would be something that might come up in a scholarship application. It might say, hey, if you have a resume, attach it here. You just kind of attach it to your application and send it as part of it. Sometimes you'll see it's a required thing for certain applications. Other times it's optional. So if you have it, it's a great thing to have for the optional or the required, obviously. Another question, do you have a link or resume recommendation site? Yes, that's something I think that we could point to our website. I believe in our resources section, we have some resume stuff. There's also a really cool resource, a little bit more focused professionally, but the library actually has something called Phoenix Works, and you can find it on the Phoenix Public Library website. It's kind of a little subsection, kind of like College Depot, actually. And I've spent some time on their website. They have a whole resume building section on their website. So it's full of tips and resources. So that's a really cool resource that's free, obviously. And then also, like Megan mentioned, you can always make an appointment with us. Resumes might not be our forte, but we're happy to help, especially with an academic resume, and talk to you all about it. But yeah, thank you again for the questions. It looks like maybe, Megan, are there questions in the room as well? I'll go ahead and mute myself for a moment just to see if Megan has anything.
We have a question. This is specifically about
Megan.
Apologies for the technical difficulties, everybody. Megan or Chris, would you be able to type the question in the chat, maybe? And actually, while we're waiting, I see Chris actually posted our resources page on our website. So that's what I was recommending there. And we do have a lot of handouts. And actually, from that site, you could find the Phoenix Works site on the Phoenix Public Library. But yeah, thank you again for your questions so far. It looks like Chris put the question in the chat. Thank you so much, Chris. We have a question about employers. How often do they read resumes and respond to them? Wow, that's a very good question. So I think that's kind of a subjective thing in terms of every company is going to be different. Every scholarship application is going to be different. But the way that I look at it in general is if they are asking for a resume, they're asking for a reason. And typically they understand that it takes a lot of time to make a resume and to fill out the application and attach it. And so I like to have a kind of a positive outlook in terms of if they're asking for it, they're going to look at it. And it's going to be part of their process. I would say that if you ever see anything of like a kind of an optional resume option, you can upload a resume. Again, I think it's just kind of a way for them to get to know you. And so they're looking for different ways to do that. Looks like we have another question in the chat. Do you have any tips on how to get more involved with community service? That is an awesome question. So that's something I think that can be a little intimidating up front to figure out kind of where to get started with community service. I think there's a couple different avenues you can take. One is if your school has different clubs or organizations. I think most schools will have community service-based clubs or classes even. So that's something that I would recommend. I think you could also reach out to community organizations. So for example, if you're part of a church or if you're part of a community center, anything like that would be great. And then kind of thinking about different ways you can help people. So if you're interested in helping people, for example, through medicine. Maybe you could look at the Phoenix Children's Hospital website and see if they have volunteering opportunities. So I think following your interest in terms of how you want to help people is a great way to get started. But yeah, I hope that was helpful. Awesome. Well, yeah, again, fantastic questions so far, everybody. Thank you so much. Please keep them coming. And it looks like we even got a website recommendation, justserve.org, for community service. Thank you so much. Fantastic. Okay, so let's keep going on to talking about personal statements. So personal statements are something that you're going to see obviously in college applications, and they do come up definitely with scholarship applications too. In terms of personal statements, you might see different questions or different ways of phrasing. You know, we want you to write an essay about yourself. We want you to write a personal statement, etc. But essentially, a lot of applications are going to ask you to write about yourself and about how you want this scholarship to help you, how the scholarship is going to move you forward in your goals. So a couple of different things that could be helpful to cover in that is talking about your background, where you come from, your family, your experience up until this point, whether in high school or in different community organizations, different activities. Could also be great to talk about your educational or career goals. So specifically for scholarships, I think scholarship committees want to hear how this scholarship is going to help you in college. Is it going to help you focus on your studies? Is it going to help you buy materials to study with? Things like that. And related, I've got questions there on the slide as well. How will it help you achieve your goals? And what makes you a strong candidate for this scholarship? So that's something I recommend too, is that I think scholarship committees want to see why you chose to apply to this scholarship specifically. What about the scholarship? What about the organization or school that it's connected to? What really made you choose that? So obviously that's a lot of different things to talk about. And something that we recommend to kind of keep it organized and to keep it achievable is kind of creating a template for yourself. So you can kind of have a base personal statement or essay that talks a lot about you and your goals, etc. And then you can just kind of copy and paste that and then adjust it to specific applications. So that way you don't have to write the whole thing each and every time, but you can kind of have a foundation to build on and get more specific with. Usually in the application, they will include if there's a maximum word count or a page length. So just be on lookout for anything like that, because that can be helpful in terms of how to format your personal statement too. I've also got a slide here talking a little bit about kind of how to get into the mindset of writing a personal statement, because again, it can be kind of daunting to start, especially. So a couple of questions to think about is how can you stand out from the other applicants? So really focusing on your personal experience and what makes you special, what makes you unique. And related, how can your personal voice come through your writing? So I think that's another thing too. It took me a long time to let go of trying to write like I thought they wanted to hear and just writing what I wanted to say. That's really hard for me to do. I'm still working on it, but it's a lesson that I recommend, because ultimately they want to know who you are. And then related to that, what story do I want to tell about myself? We all have a lot of stories about ourselves. So which one do you want to share and why? And then I know this is a big favorite of Diana's. How can I engage the reader's attention? Just like we talked about with resumes, people reading personal statements are going to be reading a lot of them. And so how can you really kind of get their attention up front and keep their attention engaged through what you've written? I think a big part of that can help is editing and revising personal statements. That's something that's been really helpful for me, and that's something that actually Diana and our colleague Meryl do as part of College Depot services. Really taking the time to ask people to look at your personal statement for you, people that you trust, their feedback. And then also it really helps me to read personal statements aloud. that really can clarify what's working and what's not. So it looks like we actually have a question from the room. So I will again mute myself, and let's see if we can get that question.
Okay, shall I go ahead? Okay.
Or just keep it more like on the highs.
Sure. Okay. Do you want me to try? It's okay. Cooper, can you hear me okay? Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So we have a question about the personal statement. In terms of content, is it okay to talk about personal hardships, or should it be more kind of uplifting and positive?
That's a
Cooper,
fantastic question. I was
you want
actually
me
going
to
to throw
tackle
it.
that one?
I was going to throw it right over to Diana. Thank you, Diana.
Yes. In addition to the financial aid duties I have at College Depot, as Cooper said, Meryl and I read your personal statements and your essays in response to college applications, and as Cooper's indicating, scholarship apps as well. It's okay to talk about personal hardships. In fact, sometimes that's what you're asked to discuss. Challenge you've overcome, a hardship you've mastered. The important factor in your essay is, as you tell the story of your hardship, to also demonstrate that you've learned something from it, or you've overcome it, or there's positivity there. I see a lot of essays where students complain a lot about their circumstance or what is wrong or what needs to be changed, but they never get around to talking about what they've learned from that or how they've grown. So make sure that's part of your story. And it might not start out that way, but if you use the help of your teachers, your counselors, your parents, your siblings, and College Depot, I don't suggest using all of those because you'll get a lot of different feedback. But at least if you use a couple of us to do the review for you, you won't start out with a perfect essay, but you will end up with something that is very submittable for either admissions or a college scholarship.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Diana.
You're welcome. A plug for our essay review services. We only ask that you give us a sufficient amount of time to look at something. Usually sending it to me at 3 a.m. and needing it by 7 a.m. the next day or the same day will not work. But if you give us 24 to 72 hours, we can usually take a look at it and get it back with you and back to you in time to submit it and get things done that you need to do for the scholarship or the admissions. That's it, Cooper. Yeah.
Thank you, Diana. Actually, since we're on this topic, Diana, and we have you here, I was wondering if you could tell us, I've been working with some of my grit students, and I've noticed a theme of extreme hesitancy to start writing the personal statement. My students are kind of trapped in like this limbo of not quite knowing how to get started. I was just wondering if you had any recommendations for just starting writing.
Perhaps my recommendations are more about how not to start than how to start. I think your advice in starting simply by jotting down ideas and things that are important or of interest to you is the most important piece, because the essay will flow from that. How not to start is to say, in answer to the question, or my name is Diana Mateer and I go to North High School or whatever, dispense with all of that and instead start with something that's going to intrigue me or any other reader. And that would be, start with a situation that adequately describes the topic you're going to talk about. Was there a time in your life that there was a specific hardship? Did you become interested in medical science because of a circumstance that happened with your grandmother, or were you in the hospital once and you said, wow, this is fascinating? Put your reader in the room with you in your first paragraph Start in the middle. You don't have to give me a chronology. You can start anywhere and then build from that. That's my best advice. We do whole 8-hour sessions sometimes on this topic, but if you need help, we're happy to at least tell you to get started. Send us something that you've done, and we will help you get through to a final draft.
Awesome.
I hope
Thank
that
you.
helped, Cooper.
I love the phrase you used, put them in the room with you. I think that's wonderful.
Yes. I want to stand there with you. I want to feel what you're feeling. I want to see what you're seeing. I want to have that experience with you. That will attach me personally to you in a way that only meeting you could help. I need to meet you through your writing.
I love that too. So it looks like we have another question from the in-person room. So I'll go ahead and mute myself again.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so hopefully do like a resume and personal statements work together. Like when you submit a personal statement, when you submit a resume, you submit both the same time.
Okay, great question. So look, I'm used, right, Chris?
No, you're good.
I'm good? Oh, okay. Okay, so Cooper and Diana, we have another question about resumes and personal statements. How do they piggyback off each other? Do you submit them both together? When do you submit one in first, or kind of, can you talk about the timeline for both?
Absolutely. So my recommendation for this is, again, usually in the application itself, it will tell you kind of what they want from a resume or from a personal statement, even letters of recommendation, and they will usually list how to get them that information. My favorite applications are the ones where you can just upload a PDF or a Word document right into your main application. It'll say like upload your resume here, upload your personal statement here. Those are super easy, super fun. I like those. Super fun. I guess I really am the scholarship guy. The other thing I see sometimes is every once in a while you'll get an application that wants a hard copy. So it'll, at the bottom of it, usually list like send all of your applications in one packet to this address. And so if you see that, you just kind of get one of those big mailing envelopes, you print everything out and you put it in with your application. So usually, again, at the same time would be great to have it all in there. And then lastly, I guess this is a little tangential, but sometimes for the letters of recommendation specifically, they might have a separate like sub almost application where you put in that person's contact information and then they'll reach out to that person and have them send the letters directly to them. So those are typically the three that I see, either uploading it virtually, which is great, including it as part of a hard copy packet, or with letters of recommendation, they might have their own thing. Would you have anything to add to that, Diana? Anything else that you've seen?
Just that I think part of the question might have been, do you need them both? And you gave very specifically great advice. Read the application and see if they want both. They are two different animals. And it's important to remember that a resume is not a personal statement, is not a resume. So your resume is largely maybe chronological. It lists activities, achievements, work experience. I really don't want to see that in a personal statement. It is not a chronology of your resume, only in complete sentences. It is a total story about maybe one or two experiences that define you, not necessarily everything you've ever done in your life. As Cooper mentioned, that's going to be reflected on the resume if they require it, and also on the application. You will be surprised at how redundant these things can be. I already told them my 10 activities on my application, and now they want a resume. They want to make sure that the two match and that you haven't made up an activity or emphasized something that you really didn't do. But really just follow the instructions and make sure that you use your personal statement to identify and define you, while you use the resume to explain what you did. The personal statement is more why you did it.
I think that's a fantastic breakdown, Diana. We actually have a very good question here, and Diana, I was hoping to ask for your help with it.
Okay.
So Julia and Juliet asks, some college officials recommend locking in scholarships with a specific university. However, if the student is still exploring options, it seems a bit premature. And I think, Diana, this could maybe hit on the idea of like stackable versus non-stackable. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Oh, sure. Every college handles scholarships differently. And when you're talking about locking in a scholarship, Julia and Juliet, I think you're talking about a college putting some amount of pressure, might not be the right word, but let's use it. They're pressuring you to make a locked in decision to enroll there. So if they tell you the scholarship that they've offered you is going to expire if you don't officially choose that school for enrollment, I'd be a little suspicious of that. Most schools will ask you to do that, but the reality is the scholarship is still going to be there. I don't see a lot of that. We'll only lock you in if you enroll by. That's not a typical practice. But I think what Cooper is talking about is you cannot earn infinite scholarship dollars. If a school has offered you a significant amount of their own money, let's say if you're going to Washington University in St. Louis, and I use them as an example only because I know a lot of students who go there, and they awarded the student $50,000 of institutional financial aid, meaning coming right off they're not going to collect it in tuition, they're giving the tuition away to you. And you bring in another $50,000 scholarship from a national organization outside of the college, it's likely you're not going to get $100,000. They're going to take the $50,000 from an external source and they're going to reduce the amount they pay because you already got money from somewhere else. So they're never going to fund beyond what it costs to go to school there for a year. So if it costs $75,000 a year, all things, tuition, room, board, everything, to go to Washington University, you can never receive more than $75,000 in a combination of the aid that they give to you. That's a very, very, very big overview of what it means to stack and not stack scholarships. We work all year with students in interpreting scholarship offers, award letters, and deciding, is that school really going to pull your money, or is that school really going to offer you reduced scholarship money because you went out and got other scholarship money outside of them? Those are things we can work with you on to determine if there really is any sense in accepting an early offer. I hope that helped. These are we're kind of meshing now the admissions, the scholarship. These are great questions.
Fantastic questions. And thank you, Diana. I know that was, there's a lot to cover there. So I thought you did a great job kind of giving
There
the
is a
overview.
lot to cover there. My best advice is talk to us.
Yeah, definitely. It looks like we might have a question again from the room. So I'll go ahead and mute myself. Megan, do we have something in the room?
Going back to copy application, is there instructions about what order you should put your paperwork in the envelope?
I actually think I got that one. So asking about like the order the application should go in like a paper hard copy, putting it in an envelope kind of situation. I'd be surprised if an application like literally listed out like you need to have it in this order. But sometimes what you'll see is they'll ask you to like print out the application, and they will usually have like a page for the personal statement, or they might at the end say like, please include your resume at the back. So again, following any instructions on there is great. If it doesn't say anything like that, I'd recommend putting the kind of main application up front and then putting your supplemental materials behind it. Looks like we got another question coming in. Where specifically do we apply for scholarships? Thank you so much for asking that, Brittany, because that's actually what we're going to talk about next in our presentation. So I will keep moving on that. I do want to keep an eye on the time. I know we're getting a little close, so I will definitely make sure to cover that. So finding out where scholarships are can be a beast. It's really kind of feel like the Wild West a little bit. And so we want to provide you with some great databases and resources to find scholarships. So here are some of our favorites. Specifically for Arizona students. If you go to an Arizona high school, if you're interested in the in-state colleges and universities, the Arizona Community Foundation is a fantastic resource. They have a ton of scholarships specifically for Arizona students. And what's really cool about them is they do kind of a general application that you fill out, and then you kind of automatically get applied to all their scholarships, and they match you with ones that you're eligible for. So we really recommend checking that out. That usually kind of happens in the springtime, but being familiar with their website and their organization, they do really great work. Second one up there is a little bit of a self-promo, but we feel really proud of it. We have a scholarships kind of portal on our website. And what we really like about it is there are different categories that you can kind of search and organize your scholarship search with. You can see a photo of our website there on the right, and it might be a little hard to read, but we have these different category buttons. So for example, you can look by deadline, you can look by different majors. If you're looking for Arizona specific scholarships, you can look for scholarships that are open to DACA Dreamer students. So we feel really proud about having those different categories. And especially in the fall, we're hoping to really kind of up that list and get it to be really plentiful. So that's something we recommend. A couple of other websites that we recommend checking out. One is Going Merry. Really great organizational tool if you're looking for scholarships, because again, it can be kind of overwhelming. We do recommend kind of focusing on their scholarships specifically. Their other stuff can be a little confusing in our eyes, but great scholarship resources. Another one we highly recommend is Scholarships AZ. We work with them quite a bit, and they focus on DACA Dreamer students, and they actually have a list of scholarships that DACA Dreamer students can apply to specifically. So if you're in that situation, they are a great resource. And then another one we really like is Unigo. They have some really fun scholarships, but they also have a great kind of organizational tool if you're looking for scholarships. So those are definitely ones that we would recommend checking out. And I will, I know I talked a little bit about our website, but I will kind of just mention that again, we really like that you can look for different types of categories. We list the main eligibility requirements. So for example, we were talking about, do you need a resume? Do you need a personal statement? We try to include those on our list so that you know just by looking at the list. And we do love to feature Arizona specific scholarships whenever we can. Looks like we have a question in the chat. What grade in high school should we start applying for scholarships? Now that is another fantastic question. So I have seen scholarships actually ranging from middle school all the way through high school. So you can find scholarships basically for whatever grade you're in. Typically, the scholarships that I see for younger people are going to be for programs. So for example, maybe a summer study program or a summer fellowship, that kind of thing. But those are fantastic opportunities to learn and to grow. You can add them to your resume, you can add them to your personal statement, you can talk about them. So there's definitely opportunities out there for whatever grade you're in. In terms of getting scholarships for college, I really recommend starting kind of the end of your junior year, that summer. Just kind of being really familiar with these scholarship resources, starting to put those application materials together. Because once the fall hits, some of the really kind of big selective scholarships start coming in pretty fast. So for example, in September, I know the Gates Scholarship is opening, or is actually due in September. So definitely kind of getting ahead of the curve summer before senior year, I think is a great place to start. Diana, do you have any other thoughts on that, kind of when to start applying?
It's never too early to look, especially at our website, because we do define before you get into the actual application who it's designed for. Many times it will say juniors or seniors, only because they want to have a more complete picture of you as a student. They want to give you time to get good grades and do lots of community service and clubs in school and all the things that may matter to them. And also, if they're financially need-based, they don't want to ask too early what your financial situation is, because I might win a lottery when my kid is a junior, but I was poor when my kid was a sophomore. So my circumstances have changed significantly. Notice I always want to win a lottery, right? But my sense is that although most are reserved for juniors and seniors, a lot of what you see on our website is repeated from year to year with updated deadlines. So if you see a scholarship that looks good and you're just a high school freshman, write down where it came from. What is the source? Because chances are it might be out there when you become a junior or senior.
Awesome. Thank you, Diana. Looks like we might have a question in our in-person room. Megan, do we have something?
So I know like everybody's circumstances are different, and it may be hard to quantify, but do you have any stats or kind of general information on how much kids apply for and then how much they end up getting?
Thank you.
That is a tough cookie, that one. So yeah, I think it really just depends on the student. It depends on what school you're interested in, what major you're interested in, your experiences. We'll talk a little bit in the presentation later. I think a strategy I would recommend is finding scholarships that really speak to what you want to do. So if you have specific goals or experiences, again, as like a graphic designer, or if you are really passionate about playing football, finding scholarships that are based on that, I think will give you a higher chance of success. Also finding scholarships, we mentioned like Arizona Community Foundation. If you're an Arizona student looking to Arizona schools, they're looking for students like you. And so again, I think the odds of success go up quite a bit. Diana, do you have any thoughts on this?
No, I think you pretty well covered it, Cooper. There is a comment in the chat that there is one school district, or at least one high school in the district, that will message scholarships to students if the guidance counselor is aware of them. That guidance counselors are an excellent source of information about upcoming scholarships, because sometimes they know about things even before we do or you do. And you want to be your counselor's best friend, even though you might not have liked them much before. You want to become the person that they think of when they scholarships cross their desk. If they're texting everyone, that's a wonderful thing. Many school districts do not have the time or resources to do that, nor the inclination. But I think it's a very good comment. Whatever school district this is doing great. As far as numbers of dollars and scholarships, Cooper, there is no reliable data collected on that. Schools are very close to the vest on telling you, for instance, how much of their own money they give. My advice to anyone saying how much is an average, don't not apply for the little money, because 10 $500 scholarships are equal to one $5,000 scholarship. You just had to work a little harder. But remember that if you can collect several of those small dollars, that's really great. And in terms of how much money you can expect or when you can expect to receive it, I had a lot of students this past year, as I know you did, Cooper and Megan, that applied and applied and applied and got really frustrated because they weren't getting any money and they were about to give up. And then March and April came and the money started rolling in. That seems really late, guys. You know, you're a high school senior. You got to make plans to go to school in August, but you didn't get that scholarship till April or May. But it came through. So my best advice is don't give up.
I think that's fantastic advice. And that actually kind of relates to another question in the chat. How are scholarships processed or inputted into a college system? So that also, I think, patience is kind of the big word that I use with my students. Typically on the application, they will usually say how they're going to give you the money if you get the scholarship. Most of the time, what I see is they are going to hook up with the school directly, and the money just goes from the scholarship organization directly to the school. And then it's applied to your account through a student portal. So you'll be able to see it eventually. Now, in my experience, it usually takes the schools a while to do that. Typically, it'll finally happen kind of the month before the semester starts kind of thing. But hopefully you'll, like Diana said, kind of know that you're getting it ahead of time. And usually they'll give you a contact person that you can ask your questions to and kind of check in with as well. Do you have anything else on that one, Diana?
No, not really. We do have another question though. Can scholarships be applied to room and board, Cooper?
Would you like to take that one?
Sure. I'll give you a break for a minute.
Thank you.
Although I think I'm why you're running late. Can scholarships be applied to room and board? Yes. Unless specifically the scholarship says this must be used for tuition or fees or books. Many scholarships simply say applied to the cost of attendance at the school.
So yeah, I know I'm kind of a broken record at this point, but reading through the application, they'll usually list what it can be used for as well.
Yes.
And then if you have questions, obviously reaching out to their contact person is a great way. Awesome. Well, thank you, Diana, and thank you everybody again for these amazing questions. I'm really, really happy with these questions today. So please keep them coming. I do know we're running a little low on time. I want to make sure we have at least a couple of minutes at the end for any last minute questions. So I'm going to kind of blaze through these next ones a little bit more quickly. But again, looking for scholarships, another kind of self-promo. We have a YouTube channel, College Depot YouTube. And part of our YouTube is we make these monthly scholarship videos that highlight scholarships that we're fans of. And we love, again, highlighting Arizona-based scholarships specifically, or scholarships that our students have had success with. So please feel free to check it out. Subscribe to our YouTube for updates on those. Our August one is currently live and September will be coming soon. Speaking of loving Arizona scholarships, again, a couple of just different Arizona scholarships that we really recommend checking out if you're an Arizona high school student. One is going to be the Education Forward Arizona Scholarship. We work with them, awesome organization. Another big one is called the Flynn Scholarship. So if you're interested in attending NAU, U of A, or ASU. That one is really awesome. It's a big ticket scholarship. It's very competitive. The application process is pretty intense, but it's a fantastic support system. And that opens in September. We've also got the Dorrance Scholarship Program. So if you're going to be a first generation college student in Arizona, we really recommend checking that one out. Again, not only in terms of the financial support, but in terms of the kind of networking and personal support as well. They do fantastic work. If you're a DACA or undocumented student, a dreamer, we also highly recommend the Dream.us scholarships. They are a wonderful organization helping undocumented students with their higher education goals and dreams. And that application opens in November. And then again, just another shout out to Arizona Community Foundation, fantastic resource. And most of those are going to be due between March and May. Megan mentioned that schools will have like their own kind of financial aid part of their website or definitely department. They also have scholarships websites, and departments. So if you're interested in attending a certain school, ASU, U of A, NAU, GCU, they will often have scholarships on their website that you can look into. And again, they're great to go for if you're interested in those schools because they're specifically for students going to those schools. Some colleges will also work with foundations. So for example, if you're thinking about the Maricopa Community Colleges, they have a foundation that has a ton of scholarships available. So definitely being familiar with foundations that work with schools like that is a great way to find them too. Awesome. So I think we have just a couple minutes left. So I think I'm going to really go quick here. I apologize for speeding through, but I want to make sure we make some time for questions. We've talked a little bit about this, but just in terms of, again, looking for scholarships, you're going to see three kind of big types: national, big ticket ones, state, local scholarships, or one specific to colleges and universities. They all have different merits, and some of them are going to be tougher than others depending on how selective they are. We recommend kind of having a mix of all three in your search, because while the national big ones can be super exciting, they're also usually really competitive. And Diana mentioned going for the smaller ones can actually really add up. So we recommend that too. And that kind of goes into this slide. Again, the big ticket, full tuition, room and board scholarships look great, but those are the ones that everyone wants. And some of the smaller ones might get kind of passed over. Not as many people apply for them. And so your chances of getting them increase, and they can really add up if you're on top of it and applying for a lot of them. So we definitely recommend that as well. This slide is really just about staying organized. Scholarships, there could obviously be a lot of them, and they ask for a lot of different things. So kind of essentially first step, searching for scholarships, finding ones that you're interested in or that look interesting, maybe up your alley. And then kind of once you have that initial list, going through and really being more selective, which ones you really want to spend time on and put effort into. And then we talked about really just kind of getting started, creating a list for yourself and starting to apply. Something else that we recommend is maybe categorizing scholarships. So we've talked about the different components that they might ask for. And so that's a way you could organize yourself as well. Maybe the first category is a little bit simpler. It's just a form, maybe some short answers, multiple choices. Boom, you're done and you've applied. Maybe the second category asks for a few more things, maybe a kind of a more in-depth personal profile, maybe a possible personal statement, asks you to talk a little bit about your experiences. And then the third one could be your more in-depth application processes, asking for letters, essays, maybe even some interviews. So kind of breaking it up that way is a great way to keep organized as well. And then we've actually got this on our website to kind of help you organize all those things. But essentially, we just recommend kind of keeping a list with this information, the deadlines, the name of the scholarship, and what they're asking for. I also really like lists like this because checking them off when you're done feels really great. And again, a really great way to stay organized. Looks like we have a question in the chat from Allie. I've heard a lot of our local colleges offer a 2-year scholarship for students if you graduate with a certain GPA. Do you have to apply for that with each school at a certain point in high school, or do they just offer it based on schools providing the information? So I think what you might be referring to, Allie, is, for example, the Maricopa Community College's like presidential scholarship, which I believe is something that when you apply to a Maricopa Community College, you're automatically applying for that as well. And if you meet the requirements, I believe they just kind of give it to you automatically. Diane, do you have anything to add to that?
No, that's absolutely correct. And the same thing is true for even a 4-year college. Could offer you a scholarship as a freshman that is renewable for 4 years. Many of those will be offered upon admission, and they are automatic, so you don't have to apply separately for them. Obama Scholars, Lumberjack Scholarship, the New American University Scholarship at ASU, or President's Award at U of A. Those are all automatic consideration. If you need to apply for a scholarship being offered by the school, they will tell you that and tell you how. But much of the time, it's just based on your admissions application and perhaps your FAFSA data.
Awesome. Thank you, Diana. So everybody, there's another question in the chat. Before we answer that, though, I just wanted to acknowledge that we're just about out of time, a couple minutes left. We want to respect your time, obviously. So if you need to get going, we totally understand. Thank you so much for joining us today. I know I'll be staying on for a little bit if you have further questions, so I'm happy to continue talking. The questions have been fantastic. So thank you again so much for that. But if you do need to get going, we totally understand. I will put up our contact information. Again, we're in the Burton Bar Central Library downtown. You can see our email there, our appointment request link, and our website, our phone number. If you're interested in receiving more help, meeting with our advisors, we are here for you. And we are, as you can probably tell, passionate about this stuff. So we love talking about these things. So thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for your questions and your attention. We really appreciate it. But yeah, so I think we'll just kind of keep answering questions for anyone who does want to stay. So Brittany asks, is there a limit to how many scholarships we can apply for? Brittany, my response for that is you can apply for as many as you would like to. I think that it's obviously good to kind of give yourself an achievable amount. You don't want to stress yourself out. But I think you also find once you have the materials ready to go, you can kind of get into a rhythm and really knock out a lot of applications. I think the thing that comes in, Diana talked about both these points, is one, it might be tough because you might not hear for a while. So you might not know if you got any scholarships for a while, but we encourage you to just keep going and keep believing. And then the other one is Diana talked about how you can only get scholarships up to the full cost of attendance. So that's something to keep in mind too. But in terms of going after the applications, we think as many as you can is great, especially ones, again, that are really focused on what you're interested in, what you're passionate about.
Cooper, Julie, and Juliet had a question too about GPA requirements. Do you want to tackle that one?
Sure, Diana.
They've received conflicting information regarding determining when universities determine GPA requirements. At the end of the junior year, midway through the senior year.
That is
it varies, but any advice on how that's calculated?
That's definitely a good question. So a couple of different things that I see is, so if they're asking for an unofficial transcript, they'll often say like, hey, like whatever you have, the most recent one is great. And then they might say afterwards, eventually we're going to need your official transcript from senior year. And so they kind of understand that you don't have that yet, but they'll usually say on the application, like, eventually we're going to need that. So if you're getting conflicting information from something, I'd recommend trying to reach out to a contact person with the scholarship or with the school, and just kind of asking them that question directly. But essentially, I would, as a rule of thumb, I'd go with whatever you, if it's unofficial, whatever you have the most recent version of. And then officially, that's when they're going to ask for something at the end of senior year.
Right. Obviously, if the deadline is in October, you don't have anything from senior year yet. You don't have any grades. So you're going to be providing largely information, transcripts, letters of recommendation from junior teachers, because you have hardly met your senior teachers yet. So it really depends on deadlines. And my words of advice, if you get a scholarship that's offered to you based on, for instance, your junior year performance, whether you're applying for admission or for a scholarship, either of those admissions offers or scholarship offers can be pulled if suddenly you blow off your senior year and you get a 0.00 GPA for that year. It's going to bring down everything and possibly knock you out of eligibility. So before, and I say this because from personal experience, my own son decided that he did not have to do well in his senior year because he already had admissions and a full tuition scholarship. But he had to struggle to keep that. So don't don't slack off.
That's a great point, Diana. Yeah, usually again on the application, they might say, in order to maintain the scholarship, you need to maintain a certain grade point average, that kind of thing.
Because
So
we
being
will
aware
ask
of that.
again.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Diana, I see in the chat, we actually have a FAFSA question.
Okay.
Is applying for FAFSA mandatory regardless of financial need?
If you don't want to apply for a federal financial aid, you don't have to. A college will likely not award anything but an upfront merit scholarship. Like if you've got a 4.0 average, they're going to give you that merit scholarship, but they're not going to give you any other aid if you don't file a FAFSA. But if you don't have family financial need or don't want to apply for any kind of a loan or even a grant, it's not required. But it is required that you pay when they tell you they want their money. So that is the only real requirement. If you're not going to apply for financial aid, they expect you're going to pay cash or make payments.
I would add to that. So when I'm looking at needs-based scholarships, a lot of them will take from the FAFSA. They'll ask for your SAR or student aid report. So if you're interested in needs-based aid, that those scholarships might require the FAFSA, which kind of makes sense.
For instance, Obama Scholars Program at ASU is a combination of a merit scholarship, federal financial aid, and institutional aid. You won't even be considered for it, even if you get admitted, unless you do a FAFSA.
Awesome. Thank you, Diana. I think that's all the questions in the chat so far, although please feel free to keep adding them. And I'm not sure if we have questions in the room or not, but I will let you know, Diana, if anything comes in the chat.
Okay. Yeah, I'm seeing it too, Cooper.
Awesome.
But one day I'm actually reading the chat. I'm getting better at this.
But yeah, thank you all so much for joining us. Thank you for these amazing questions. They were fantastic.
Yes. You kept us very busy and challenged today, and we definitely appreciate that. I think our best advice to all of you as you leave and go about your day is that you are not alone in the financial aid process, and no question you have is stupid. I've been doing this for 40 years, and it is like having brain surgery to figure this out. So we are here to help you. We've given you a really great overview today. I thank you, Megan and Cooper. Wonderful information. But we are here to answer your questions, not just today, but throughout the year. So please visit our scholarship site, apply, ask us your FAFSA questions, and know that we are going to be up and running with FAFSA labs and helping you complete the FAFSA if you're in your senior year come October 1st. Do not despair if you do not complete your document on October 1st. You have time. There is no prize for doing the FAFSA on October 1 at 12:01 a.m. But you want to do it as soon as you can and get it out of the way.
I appreciate you saying that, Diana, because it can feel like you're alone and you're not, like you said. So, and actually, speaking of that, if you're interested in making an appointment with us, I put our appointment request link in the chat. So if you have more questions or just looking for ideas for scholarships, personal statements, anything like that, please feel free to make an appointment with that.
Megan, any further comments? I think it's lunchtime for all of our attendees.
It looks like she's got a good conversation going in the room.
Oh, does she? Okay. Yeah, I see her now. She's talking. Any other questions from those of you still on? We appreciate so much you giving us your time this morning.
And Diana, since we're just doing questions now, I think I'll stop sharing the PowerPoint so they can just see us talking.
Okay, that's fine. I wish there was a prize for greatest question because all of you would win. And I suppose this level of participation, Cooper, says that this is one of the primary topics that college-bound students and families are interested in. I guess no duh, huh? That's not surprising.
It's great though. I mean, I think you and I have talked about how it makes such a difference when you're doing a presentation, when the audience is engaged and asking questions. Like
Yes.
you can feel the energy.
Otherwise, we would have been done in 45 minutes.
But yeah, thank you all again so much for joining us for the questions.
Absolutely.
We really enjoyed it.
You all were wonderful. I think they get the prize for the most participatory this summer.
Definitely. Oh, it is weird, Diana. I could see myself on the
I
screen in
see
the
you
room.
behind Megan. It is weird.
Truly a hybrid experience.
I thought that's Cooper behind her. But we have to have a little fun with these hybrid sessions, everyone.
Well, everybody, it looks like we're down to about 5 attendees left virtually. If you're still here virtually, if you have a question that's a little bit more personal or anything like that, feel free to reach out to us. Again, also make an appointment with us. If not, we might close the teams around 11:45. So if you have any other questions in the next 5 minutes, that'd be great.
I think that's a very smart plan, Cooper. So we'll hang on for another 6 minutes or so.
And Diana, thank you again for joining us. Like having
Certainly.
your insight really makes a huge difference. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to join. Gives
This
me
was a fun.
something to do on Saturday morning in Las Vegas.
Looks like we might have something coming into the chat.
There you are, Cooper. Look at you. That's the weirdest thing.
It's so weird, Diana.
I think we're.
Hey, Diana, sorry about that.
That's all right.
I think we're gonna maybe ask some of the students to film some testimonials for a social media,
Okay.
which sounds pretty cool to me. So I think I might jump off. I think we've only
Okay.
got a couple people left, so I think we're probably okay to end the meeting. How do you feel?
I think we're okay. One last chance. Any more questions? Obviously, we've told you we're around all the time. So if you leave the meeting and go, I wish I'd asked this, give us a call. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Cooper, Megan, wonderful job. Chris, thank you for your help today. Appreciate you all.
Thank you so much, Diana. We really
All
appreciate
right, I'm
you.
going to close out here.
Sounds good. Have a good day. Have a good
You
Saturday.
too. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to end the Teams meeting, but have a great rest of your Saturday. And please feel free to reach out with questions or if you'd like to make an appointment.